Her abusive ex escaped prison and called her from outside the Mafia boss office. Serena Costa thought the nightmare was over when Henrique Silva was locked away. But after midnight, her phone vibrated inside Bianchi Imports, and the voice that once destroyed her life whispered, "You really thought prison could keep me away?" Seconds later, the elevator opened on an empty floor, and a black envelope appeared in the hallway. Inside was a photo taken while Serena slept in her own apartment. The message was worse than a threat. "Welcome to the Bianchi family, Serena." Serena Costa first learned that fear could have a sound. It was not always a scream. It was not always a gunshot. Sometimes it was a phone vibrating on a desk after midnight. Sometimes it was an elevator chiming on a floor that should have been empty. Sometimes it was the soft, familiar breath of a man who had once told you he loved you while slowly taking your life apart piece by piece. That night, the 23rd floor of Bianchi Imports was nearly dark. Most of the office had gone home hours ago. The reception desk downstairs was locked. The cleaning crew finished their rounds. Only Serena's desk lamp remained on, casting a small golden circle across import files, shipping manifests, and the half-finished report she had promised herself she would complete before leaving. Outside the glass walls, the city glittered as if nothing cruel ever happened behind expensive windows. Serena was reviewing a shipment file from Naples when her phone began to vibrate. Unknown number. She stared at it. Once, before everything, she would have answered quickly. She would have explained herself before anyone accused her. She would have apologized for making someone wait. Now she paused. Dr. Reeves had taught her that fear wants speed. Healing asks for one breath. So Serena inhaled, held it, let it go. Then she answered, "Hello." At first, there was only static. Then a man laughed softly, not loud, not wild, just familiar enough to make the blood in her fingers turn cold. "You sound calmer now," he said. Serena did not move. She knew that voice. She had heard it whisper apologies against her hair. She had heard it shout accusations in a dark apartment. She had heard it break into tears after hurting her, telling her he loved her too much, telling her she made him crazy, telling her no one else would ever understand them. She had also heard it in court, months earlier, when a judge read the verdict and Henrique Silva looked at her as if telling the truth had been the cruelest betrayal of all. "You should be in custody," Serena said. Her voice came out steady. That surprised her. Henrique breathed into the line, slow, almost pleased. "You really thought prison could keep me away from you?" Serena rose from her chair. It rolled back and touched the cabinet behind her. "Turn yourself in. You say that like you are so clean now," he said. "Like you are the good woman. Like I am the monster. You became dangerous. That was your choice." "No," his voice cracked, then softened at once. "That old switch. That old trick. No, baby, you know me. You know what happened. I was under pressure. I was scared. I made mistakes. But I would never have done any of it if he had not poisoned you against me." Serena looked at her reflection in the glass wall. Pale face, dark eyes, shoulders straight. Not fearless, but still standing. "Do not call me baby." Silence. Then Henrique said, "Look down." Serena did not want to. She knew he wanted obedience. That was always the first hook. "Look at me. Answer me. Tell me where you are. Prove you love me." But the body remembers old commands before the mind can reject them. Her eyes moved to the window, far below. Across the street from the security gate, beneath a broken street lamp, a man stood beside a black sedan. He was too far away to see clearly, but he was looking up, straight toward her floor, straight toward her. "See," Henrique whispered. "Bianchi can put guards at every door, cameras in every hallway, men with guns in every car, but he cannot protect something that does not belong to him." Serena's fingers tightened around the phone. The word belong touched an old bruise inside her. Not on the skin, deeper than that. A bruise made from years of being watched, questioned, corrected, and made smaller. "I do not belong to him either," she said. "I belong to myself." Henrique laughed. "But there was a crack in it. You learned that from him." "No, I learned it after surviving you." The elevator at the far end of the hall chimed. Serena turned so fast her shoulder hit the edge of her desk. The doors opened. No one stepped out. The corridor was empty, but on the floor, just beyond the elevator, lay a black envelope, thick paper, clean edges, placed there with care. Serena did not walk toward it. She slipped one hand beneath the desk and pressed the silent alarm button Dante had installed after the first anonymous photograph arrived. "What did you send me?" she asked. Henrique's breathing changed. "What are you talking about?" "The envelope. I did not send an envelope. Henrique, his voice sharpened with fear now. Real fear, not performance. Do you really think I am the only person watching you? Do you think Bianca's enemies do not know your name? Do you think I am the worst thing that can happen to you? The line went dead. Serena stood in the hum of the dim office lights with the phone still pressed to her ear. Then the stairwell door opened. Dante Russo appeared first. Broad shoulders, dark suit, calm eyes. One hand under his jacket, 2 security men followed, silent and alert. Miss Costa, Dante said, step away from the hallway. Serena obeyed, not because she felt weak, but because she had learned the difference between pride and wisdom. Dante put on gloves and crouched beside the envelope. He opened it carefully. Serena watched his face. His jaw tightened. That was enough. Show me, she said. Miss Costa, Dante, her voice sharpened. If it is about me, I see it. Dante looked at her with something like respect. Then he turned the photograph over. It was Serena asleep in her Westbrook apartment. Her own apartment. The apartment she had chosen because it was hers. The one with uneven floors, a blue kettle, watercolor paper near the window, and 2 locks she had paid for herself. The photograph had been taken from inside the room, close enough to see the moonlight on her cheek, close enough to see the book left open beside her bed. Written across the bottom, in elegant black ink, were 6 words. Welcome to the Bianca family, Serena. Dante slipped the photo back into the envelope. We move now. Call Massimo. Already done. Serena looked toward the window again. The black sedan was gone. The man beneath the street lamp was gone too. And for one strange moment, the present folded into the past. 7 months earlier, she had stood in this same building, pretending nothing was wrong. Back then, she had been just Serena Costa, operations assistant at Bianca Imports. 29 years old, careful, polite, dependable. She had worked there for 4 years. Long enough to know which clients asked too few questions, which shipping containers had too much security, which contracts crossed Massimo Bianca's desk without ever touching the public files. On paper, Bianca Imports handled luxury goods, rare textiles, antique furniture, specialty food, and private cargo for wealthy clients who valued discretion. The paperwork was clean, the taxes were paid, the office smelled of coffee, stone, and expensive leather. But the city whispered about Massimo Bianca. It whispered that his father had built the family name through more than legal shipping. It whispered that men who betrayed the Bianchis often left town before sunrise. It whispered that some companies looked clean because the dirt was buried deep. Serena had trained herself not to listen. She needed the job. She needed the paycheck. She needed order. And if Massimo lived in a world of shadows, she stayed in the fluorescent light. That was what she told herself. What she did not tell herself was harder. She noticed him. She noticed the quiet way he entered rooms, the way grown men straightened when he spoke, the way his dark eyes could move over a contract, a shipment, a man, and find the weakness in seconds. She noticed the rare softness in his voice when he said her name. She hated herself for noticing, because she had a boyfriend, Henrique Silva. In the beginning, Henrique had been light, or she had believed he was. She met him at a gallery opening in an old warehouse by the river. He was a photographer then, talented, charming, a little wounded in a way that made people want to be kind to him. He took pictures of rain on windows, wrinkled hands, lonely streets, laughing mouths. He took a picture of Serena when she was not looking, her head tilted back, her eyes bright. When he showed it to her, she hardly recognized herself. That is how you look when you forget to be careful, he told her. She loved that sentence. Or maybe she loved being seen that way. He asked her to coffee the next day. She said no at first because she did not usually date men who spoke like they were already inside a poem. He laughed and said, "Then I will ask normally. Coffee, Serena. 1 cup, public place. You can leave whenever you want." That sounded safe. It sounded respectful. He chose a small cafe with chipped blue cups and old photographs on the walls. He asked about her work. He listened when she spoke about import schedules, not because he cared about customs forms, but because he seemed to care that she cared. On their 3rd date, he walked her to the subway and waited until the train came. On their 5th, he brought her a sketchbook because she mentioned she used to paint. On their 10th, he photographed her laughing in the rain and told her she looked like a woman who had forgotten to ask permission to be alive. She loved him for saying things like that, or she loved the version of herself that appeared in his sentences. That was how many dangerous relationships begin. Not with pain, with recognition, with attention. With a man who seems to see the hidden room inside you. At first, his attention felt like devotion. He texted good morning. He wanted to know when she got to work. He asked who she had lunch with. He said location sharing made him feel better 'cause the city was dangerous. He walked her home. He remembered her coffee order. He kissed her forehead in grocery store lines. He said her sister did not understand their love. He said her friends were jealous. He said Marcos from accounting laughed too warmly at her jokes. He said Massimo Bianchi looked at her like a man waiting for a door to open. The first time Serena hesitated to share her location, Henrique did not rage. He went quiet. He sat on the edge of their bed, with his hands hanging between his knees, and said, "I guess I just thought we trusted each other." That was worse than rage. Rage made you defend yourself. Sadness made you prove yourself. Serena handed over the access. The first time he asked for her phone password, he said his had died, and he needed to check a client message. The second time, he checked it while she was in the shower. The third time, he no longer asked. When she protested, he smiled sadly and said, "What are you afraid I'll see?" Every rule arrived disguised as hurt. Every boundary she tried to set became evidence of betrayal. At first, Serena argued. Then she explained. Then she apologized. Then she stopped seeing people who made Henrique uncomfortable. That was how the cage grew. One adjustment at a time. People outside the cage rarely understood that. Control did not arrive wearing a monster's face. It arrived as concern. It said, "I worry." It said, "Why didn't you answer?" It said, "If you have nothing to hide, why are you upset?" Then one day, you woke up and realized privacy had become suspicious, silence had become guilt, and love had become a room with no windows. On the night everything broke, Serena had been working late. Her phone kept buzzing on the desk. "Henrique, where are you?" "At work," she typed. "Same as this morning." His answer came fast. "You smiled at Marcos today. I saw you." Her stomach turned. Marcos had told her about his daughter's birthday party. Nothing more, she typed slowly. He was talking about his daughter. "Please do not start." The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Don't lie to me, Serena." She placed the phone face down and pressed her palms to the desk. She did not hear Massimo step into the doorway. "Serena," his voice was quiet. It always was. Massimo Bianchi did not need volume. People leaned closer when he spoke. He wore a charcoal suit that night, jacket open, white shirt collar loosened, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked less like the controlled businessman she saw in meetings, and more like the man the city whispered about, still, watchful, dangerous because he did not need to prove it. "Everything all right?" he asked. Serena slipped the phone into her bag. "Yes, Mr. Bianchi. Just finishing reconciliations." His eyes moved to the bag, then back to her face. Massimo had a gift for seeing the sentence underneath the sentence. It was one reason she avoided being alone with him, not because he frightened her, because he did not. That was the dangerous part. "It is past 7, he said. "Go home. I am almost done. It will wait. I do not mind staying." His jaw moved slightly. Serena, just her name, softened by the Italian edge in his voice. "Go home, that is not a suggestion." She nodded because arguing with him was easier in her imagination than in real life. As she gathered her things, her phone buzzed again. Massimo looked at it. He did not ask. That mattered. Henrique always asked. Henrique demanded. Massimo only said, "If you ever need anything, you call me, day or night." Serena looked up. "Thank you, Mr. Bianchi." "Massimo," he said. Then he seemed to catch himself. "When it matters. Call me Massimo." She smiled because if she did not smile, she might cry. "Good night." "Night, Danon." Serena. The apartment she shared with Henrique smelled like cigarettes and old takeout. His camera equipment covered the coffee table. 4 empty beer bottles stood on the windowsill like witnesses. He sat in the dark, cleaning a lens with rough, angry movements. "You relate," he said. "Mr. Bianchi made me leave at 7. She regretted it the second she said it." Henrique's head lifted. "Made you, asked me to," she said quickly. He said the work could wait. Henrique stood. He was still handsome, which made it worse. Anger had not made him ugly. It had only sharpened him into someone hard, bitter, and hollow. "Always so thoughtful, isn't he?" Henrique said. "Always watching you, always waiting for you to need him. He is my boss, and Marcos, a coworker, and the waiter last week, and the delivery guy you thanked. Are they all nothing too?" Serena closed her eyes. "I am tired. Do not dismiss me. I am not. Do not lie to me." He crossed the room before she could step back. His hand closed around her wrist. Too hard, the pain was instant, familiar. Shameful because it was familiar. "Henrique, let go." Say you do not want him. I do not want this conversation. Say it. You are hurting me. His other hand grabbed her other wrist. You think I do not see how he looks at you. Nothing happened. But you wanted it to. Silence. That was the mistake. Not because it was true the way he meant, but because there had been something. Not an affair, not a betrayal. A pull. A quiet current beneath 4 years of office hours and careful distance. Massimo had never crossed a line. Neither had she. But some truths exist before action. Henrique saw the hesitation. His face twisted. Then his hand came up. The slap cracked through the apartment. Serena's head snapped to the side. For a moment, she did not understand. Her cheek burned. Her ears rang. Henrique froze. Horror crossed his face. Then panic. Then the old performance. Serena, he whispered. Baby, God, I am sorry. I did not mean it. She backed away, hand to her face. Do not touch me. I am sorry. I just lose my mind when I think of you with him. I love you so much it makes me crazy. There it was. The sentence that had excused too much. Love, as if love were a fever. As if love erased responsibility. As if love could bruise wrists. Steal breath. Monitor a phone. Empty a room. And still call itself holy. Serena looked at him and finally saw the cage. It had not been built in one night. It had been built slowly. Text by text. Apology by apology. Rule by rule. Leave, she said. Henrique blinked. What? Get out. Serena, don't do this. Get out, or I call the police. His face hardened. For one moment. The remorse disappeared, and the thing beneath looked through. This isn't over. Leave. He grabbed his jacket. At the door. He turned back. Tomorrow you will understand. We belong together. Then he was gone. Serena locked the door. The deadbolt. The chain. Then she slid to the floor and shook so hard her teeth clicked. She did not call 911. Later, she would understand that shock makes strange choices for you. Shame does too. She did not call her sister. She did not call her mother, who had warned her gently, then urgently, then not at all, because Serena's had stopped answering. She scrolled to a number she had never used. Massimo Bianchi. Her thumb hovered. What would she say? My boyfriend hit me, and somehow you are the only person I trust right now. It sounded impossible. It sounded true. She pressed call. He answered on the second ring. Serena, no sleep in his voice. No confusion. Only attention. What is wrong? Something broke in her then. Can you come get me? She whispered. Please, I cannot stay here. His voice changed. Not louder, colder, focused. Where are you? Home, Henrique left. But he might come back. Lock the door. I did. Windows. Yes. Stay on the phone. I am 10 minutes away. Massimo, pack a bag. Cara, enough for a few days. Cara, dear. The word fell into the room like warmth. Serena got up because his voice told her how. She moved through the apartment in a daze, throwing clothes, documents, a toothbrush, and a phone charger into a bag. 7 minutes. 6, 5. A knock came. She froze. Serena, it is me. She opened the door. Massimo stood there in jeans and a black t-shirt, hair slightly disheveled, as if he had left wherever he was without thinking. Dante stood behind him. Serena saw Massimo's eyes find her wrists first, then her cheek. Something dark moved across his face. So dark, Dante said quietly. Boss. Massimo blinked once. When he looked at Serena again, his voice was gentle. Come with me. She did, not because she belonged to him, not because he ordered it, because for the first time in a long time, someone had come when she asked for help. Massimo's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building where even the silence sounded expensive. Marble floors, glass walls, soft gray furniture. Art Serena did not recognize but knew cost more than her car. The city stretched below like a kingdom built from light. She should have felt impressed. She felt numb. Dante drove them there without speaking, watching mirrors with the calm of a man who expected danger and did not fear it. Massimo sat beside Serena in the back seat, not touching her, though his hands opened and closed once on his knees when streetlights revealed the bruises forming around her wrists. I can take you to a hotel, he said, or a hospital, or the police. You decide. Serena looked at him. That mattered. You decide. Not I know what is best. Not you will do what I say. I cannot be alone tonight, she admitted. She hated how small her voice sounded. Then you will not be. I do not want to report it tonight. I think you should. I know. She waited for him to push. He did not. Then we start with a doctor, he said. My doctor is discreet, professional. She can document what she sees. Even if you are not ready to use it, document, photographs, notes, timestamps. Injuries change. Evidence fades. The word evidence landed hard. She was not ready to become a file. She was still trying to understand how the man who once photographed her laughing had become the man whose handprint burned on her cheek. "Okay," she said. "Doctor, no police tonight." Massimo nodded. No police tonight. The guest suite was larger than the apartment she shared with Henrique. Massimo placed her bag on a bench and stood near the door. Careful, almost formal. "Bathroom is there. Towels in the cabinet. Elena keeps spare clothes in the drawers for guests. My room is at the other end of the hall. Dante will be outside the main entrance. You are safe here." Serena looked at the bed. The thick rug. The pale curtains. It was too much, too kind, too strange. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He did not pretend not to understand. "Because you called." That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters tonight. Dr. Caruso arrived 30 minutes later, a woman in her 50s with calm hands and tired eyes. She examined Serena's wrists, cheek, shoulders, and ribs. She asked questions without judgment. "Did he strike you with an open hand? Did you lose consciousness? Any dizziness? Any pain when breathing?" Serena answered as best she could. Massimo waited outside. That mattered too. When Dr. Caruso finished, she said there were no fractures, but the bruising would worsen before it faded. She handed Serena pain medication and a mild sleep aid. "Trauma keeps the body awake," she said. "It thinks staying alert will keep you alive. Tonight your body needs help." Remembering the immediate danger has passed, Serena almost cried at that. The immediate danger has passed. Not all danger. Not yet. Henrique was still out there. The lease had both their names on it. Their joint account held her last paycheck. The car she drove was technically his, because he had insisted putting the title in his name would make insurance easier. Easier for whom? She knew the answer now. After the doctor left, Serena showered for a long time, letting hot water run over skin that still felt marked by his hands. When she came out in borrowed pajamas, she found Massimo in the living room by the window, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He turned when she entered. For a moment, neither spoke. He looked different out of the office. More human. More dangerous, too. Maybe because he was trying so hard not to be. "You should sleep," he said. "I do not think I can. Do you want tea?" The question was so ordinary she nearly laughed. "Nearly. Tea. It helps some people. Do you make tea often, Mr. Bianchi?" His mouth softened. "Not often, but I can learn." So they sat at opposite ends of a long sofa, a careful ocean of leather between them, steam rising from 2 mugs. Serena stared at the city. "I keep thinking I should have seen it earlier." "Seen what?" "All of it. The jealousy. The control. The way he made everything smaller. My friends. My work. My life. I thought if I loved him better, he would relax." Massimo was quiet for a moment. "People like him teach you to measure love by how much of yourself you are willing to surrender." Serena swallowed. "And what is love supposed to be?" "Room," Massimo said. "At least, that is what I think. Room to breathe. Room to be angry. Room to say no. Room to leave if you need to." She looked at him. "That sounds very noble for a man everyone says is dangerous." "I am dangerous." He said it without pride, without shame. "But not to you." The answer should have frightened her. Instead, it felt honest. That was almost more frightening. The next morning, Serena woke to sunlight and pain. Her phone held 17 missed calls and 23 messages from Henrique. They began with apologies. "Baby, I am sorry. Please come home." Then blame. "You know how I get when you ignore me." Then threats. "I know where you are. You think Bianchi can protect you. You think running to him proves you were not already his." She read them all. Not because she wanted to, but because something in her needed to stop looking away. A soft knock sounded. She jumped. Serena, Massimo's voice. "Yes, 1 minute." She pulled on a robe and opened the door. He stood there holding a tray with coffee, toast, fruit, and pastries arranged with awkward care. "Elena said people in shock should eat," he said. "Elena sounds wise. She is terrifying." That made Serena smile. A small one. Massimo saw it and looked away, as if he did not want to take too much from it. "I need to go to the office for a few hours," he said. "Dante is here. Elena is here. You can use any room. No one will disturb you." "I should come in. I have work." His eyes narrowed slightly. No, take the day. That is not me controlling you. That is me saying, you look like you might fall over," she almost argued. Then she realized she did feel like she might fall over. "What did you tell Marcos?" that you needed personal time. Nothing else. Your story is yours. The simple sentence went through her like a blade and a balm at once. Your story is yours. Henrique had made her doubt that. He had taken her private fears and used them as evidence against her. Massimo was handing ownership back. After he left, Serena sat with coffee by the window and opened her banking app. She needed to know what she had. She needed to plan. The joint account showed 347, ID2. She stared at the number. That could not be right. Her last paycheck had been deposited a week before. She clicked transactions, cash withdrawals, transfers, purchases she did not recognize. Her pulse began to pound. She opened her credit report with shaking hands. 3 credit cards she had never opened. A personal loan for $15,000. Another for $8,000. 60 days past due. Smaller balances, fees, late notices. Her name on everything. Her social security number. Her address. Her employer. Her life. For a minute, there was no air. Then the truth came together with terrible clarity. Henrique had not snapped last night. Henrique had been building a trap. The location sharing. The joint account. The car in his name. The way he insisted he handle bills because she worked too much. The questions about her documents. The nights she slept beside him. While he may have photographed bank statements, insurance papers, tax forms, Serena's face still hurt. Her wrists throbbed. But none of that compared to the anger rising in her throat. She called Massimo. He answered at once. Serena, he stole from me, she said. He used my name. Credit cards, loans. Almost $25,000. Maybe more. Silence, then Massimo's voice. Low and lethal. I am coming back. Massimo, do not call him. Do not message him. Do not touch anything else until I see it. I want to report him. That stopped him. Good, but I want to do it my way. 20 minutes later, he walked into the penthouse with Dante behind him and a lawyer on speakerphone. Serena had expected Massimo to take over. Instead, when he saw her sitting at the table with screenshots, account numbers, and a notebook already filled with dates, he stopped. There was something like pride in his expression. Show me, he said. She did. Every account, every withdrawal, every forged signature she could find. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, we freeze your credit today. We contact the banks. We file a police report for identity theft and fraud. We preserve every message. We request copies of every application. We document the assault. And you, she asked. What about me? What do you want to do? Massimo's eyes went still. Dante shifted near the door. For a moment, the room changed temperature. What I want, Massimo said carefully, is not the right question. It is if I am staying in your house. His gaze held hers. I want to find him. I want to make sure he never touches you, threatens you, or speaks your name again. He did not explain what that meant. He did not need to. And what are you going to do? Serena asked. A muscle moved in his jaw. What you choose. That was the first real test between them. Not romance. Not desire. Choice. Serena looked at the city beyond the glass. If you make him disappear. I stay the weak woman everyone whispers about, the one rescued by a mafia boss. I do not want that. Massimo flinched slightly at the word mafia, but he did not deny it. What do you want? Records, charges. A judge. I want him exposed in daylight. I want to stand in a room and say what he did. I want him to know I was the one who ended it. Massimo's expression changed. The darkness did not leave him, but it bowed to something else. Respect. Then that is what we will do. The police station was gray, cold, and smelled like burnt coffee. Detective Sarah Morrison took Serena's statement in a small interview room, asking about the assault first, then the financial fraud. She was patient. That helped. She did not ask why Serena had stayed. That helped more. Instead, she said, control often escalates when the victim starts to gain independence. You leaving may have threatened him, but his choices are still his choices. Serena wrote that sentence down later. His choices are still his choices. It became a rope she held whenever guilt tried to drag her backward. Over the next week, Serena worked with the detective, the banks, and a lawyer named Amelia Grant, whom Massimo retained but instructed to answer only to Serena. That distinction mattered. Amelia was sharp, direct, and kind in the way knives can be kind when they cut you free. She helped Serena file disputes, freeze her credit, document the fraudulent accounts, and begin the process for a restraining order. Dr. Caruso's photographs became part of the record. The texts became part of the record. The destroyed trust became paper, dates, evidence. Henrique, meanwhile, became smarter than panic. That was what made him frightening. He did not simply rage. He prepared. He sent emails from an address that looked like Serena's old backup account, claiming she had authorized the loans. He uploaded fake screenshots of conversations where she seemed to agree to open credit cards with him. He sent a message to Bianchi Imports' HR department, accusing Serena of using her relationship with Massimo to frame an innocent man. The email included enough personal details to sound believable: her old address, her last 4 digits, her work schedule, even a scanned copy of her driver's license. For 2 hours, Serena felt the floor disappear again. Not because people believed him. HR handled it professionally. Amelia took control. But the message was clear. Henrique did not only want her back. He wanted to make her look unstable. He wanted to ruin the credibility she was building before she could use it against him. "This is why we document everything," Amelia told her. "Abusers often understand image. They attack reputation because they know truth needs witnesses." Serena wrote that down too. Truth needs witnesses. Then came the old apartment. Dante accompanied Serena to collect documents, clothes, and painting supplies. The door was unlocked. Inside, everything was destroyed. Clothes shredded. Books ripped apart. Frames broken. Holes punched in the walls. In the kitchen sink, blackened scraps of photographs and old watercolor paper clung to porcelain. Serena stood in the doorway, unable to step over the wreckage at first. This place had been a prison. Yes, but it had also held pieces of her. Her favorite mug. Her old sketchbooks. The blue scarf her sister had bought her. The cheap bookshelf she assembled alone before Henrique moved in, and told her she did everything the hard way. Dante moved through the rooms, taking photographs for evidence. Serena went to the closet where she had stored her watercolor box 2 years earlier. After Henrique complained the supplies took up too much space. The box was crushed. Tubes of paint split open. Brushes snapped. For a second, grief came so suddenly she had to grip the doorframe. Not for the things. Not only. For the years she had packed away parts of herself to keep peace with a man who had never intended peace. She picked up a broken brush. Dante came to stand beside her. "Miss Costa," he thought, "if he destroyed these, I would have nothing left." Her voice was quiet. He was wrong. Dante looked at the brush in her hand. "Mr. Bianchi has a studio space in the building." Serena almost laughed through the ache in her throat. "Course he does. Good light," Dante said. "Bad furniture." This time she did laugh. Small, real. Then Dante crouched near the underside of her old desk. His expression changed. "Do not touch this." Serena turned. "What is it?" He held up a small black device sealed inside an evidence bag. Tracker, maybe audio too. The apartment seemed to shrink again. Henrique had not only followed her phone. He had listened. To calls, to private moments. Maybe to the nights. She cried quietly in the bathroom because she did not know how to name what was happening. When Massimo heard, he did not speak for almost a full minute. They were in his study, Serena sitting across from him, Dante standing by the door. The device lay on the desk between them like a dead insect. "I can end this tonight," Massimo said. His voice was so calm that it frightened her, more than shouting would have. Serena looked at him. "No, Serena. No, he put a listening device in your home. Then we use it as evidence. He hit you. We use that too. He stole your identity. And we prove it." Massimo stood and walked to the window. His hands were fists at his sides. "You ask me to stand still while he breathes. I ask you to stand with me while I fight him in a way that gives me my life back." That reached him. She saw it. He turned slowly. "Do you know how hard that is?" "Yes," she said. "Do you know how hard it is for me not to run back to silence? Because silence feels easier than being brave." He came back to the desk, but did not sit. "You are brave. I am terrified. Both can be true." That became another rope. Both can be true. Fear and courage. Anger and grief. Help and independence. Love and caution. The next turn came 3 days later, when Amelia's investigator found something hidden inside the loan transfers. One of Henrique's withdrawals had been wired through a shell vendor tied to the Carlotti family, the organization that controlled the Southside docks. At first, it looked like debt, then it looked worse. Henrique had not only borrowed money, he had sold information. Serena's building access, Massimo's travel schedule, the routine of the security team, names of employees, small details, useful details, the kind of information that did not look dangerous until the wrong person assembled it. Massimo told Serena in his study because she had made him promise not to filter the truth. He looked ashamed as he said it. "I should have told you the moment we suspected it." Serena sat very still. "You knew before now." We suspected, and you decided I could not handle it. I decided you had enough fear. Her eyes hardened. That was not your decision. I know. Do you? Her voice rose. Because protection becomes control when you decide which truth I am allowed to hear. Massimo took the blow. He deserved it. You are right. Do not agree just to calm me. I am not. He stepped away from the desk, giving her space. I was afraid. That stopped her. Of what? His voice lowered. Of watching you look clearly at my world and decide you want no part of it. The honesty hurt more than a defense would have. Serena wanted to stay angry. She was angry, but she also understood fear. Understanding did not erase accountability. I need honesty, she said, even when it scares me. Especially then. You will have it. All of it. All of it. She nodded once. Then start now. So he did. He told her about the Carlottes. Not with glamour. Not with pride. With the weary precision of a man describing a storm pattern. Old rivalries. Dock contracts. Bribed inspectors. Quiet agreements that kept civilians out of conflict most of the time, because chaos was bad for business. He told her Giuliana Rossi ran operations for the Carlotti family. She was not reckless. She was strategic. If she knew Serena's name, it meant Serena had become a calculation. Not a target yet. A pressure point. Serena listened. She did not like what she heard. But the truth, ugly as it was, felt cleaner than being protected by silence. I am not a package you can move to a safer shelf, she said. No, I will not be used by them or hidden by you. No, if I stay near you. I need to know the real cost. Massimo looked at her. And if the cost is too high, she did not answer immediately. Then I decide that, not you. A few days later, Massimo took Serena to lunch after a meeting with Emilia. It was a quiet restaurant with low lights and private booths. Serena had eaten very little all week. And Massimo noticed because Massimo noticed everything. He ordered soup she did not want, and bread she ended up eating. They were discussing bank affidavits, when Serena felt someone watching. Across the room sat a woman in a cream suit, black hair swept back, red lipstick precise enough to look like a threat. She lifted her wine glass when Serena met her eyes. Who is that? Serena asked. Massimo's expression closed. Giuliana Rossi. Should I know that name? No, but I will. He sighed. She runs operations for the Carlotti family, and she is watching us because people watch me. No, Serena said. She is watching me. Before Massimo could answer, Giuliana rose and walked toward them. Every step was smooth, expensive, planned. Massimo, she said, you have been difficult to reach. Not difficult, he replied. Selective. Giuliana smiled. And this must be Serena Costa. Serena sat straighter. I do not believe we have met. No, but some people become interesting before introductions. Massimo's voice turned cold. Choose your next words carefully. Giuliana glanced at him. Amused. Relax. I am only admiring the woman who made Massimo Bianchi leave 3 meetings early in 1 week. Serena felt the weight beneath the joke. Giuliana looked at her as if she were a weakness. A new door into a locked house. Whatever business you have with him, Serena said, does not involve me. Everything involves someone, Giuliana replied. That is the first lesson of this city. Massimo stood. He did not loom. He did not need to. Walk away. Giuliana, her eyes stayed on Serena. Be careful. Apsis Costa. Men like him do not have ordinary enemies. And women loved by men like him rarely remain ordinary. Then she left. Serena's hands were cold in her lap. You said she is not a threat. I said do not worry about her. That is not the same thing. Massimo sat down again. No, it is not. That night, a black envelope appeared outside Serena's guest suite. No one knew how it got there. Inside was a photograph of Serena leaving the police station. No note, only a black rose stamped in the corner. The message was clear. Henrique had hurt her in private. The Carlottas were telling her that public or private no longer mattered. She was visible now. Serena did not sleep much that night. She sat by the window in the guest suite, wrapped in a blanket, looking down at the city that had suddenly become a map of threats. Massimo knocked once just before dawn. You awake? Yes. May I come in? That small question almost undid her. He still asked. Even now, yes. He entered with 2 mugs. Terrible tea, she asked. Improving tea, he corrected. She took 1 mug. They stood by the window without touching. I need you to understand something, he said. I am not proud of everything my family built. I did not choose the name I inherited, but I have chosen what to do with it. And what have you chosen? Less blood than my father. More structure. More distance between business and civilians. She looked at him. That is not the same as clean. No, do you want clean? He looked out over the city. Some days. And other days. Other days I want enough power that no one can touch what matters to me. Serena heard the honesty. She also heard the danger. I cannot be one of your possessions. Massimo, not even the precious kind. His eyes closed briefly. I know. Do you? I am learning. That was not a perfect answer. It was a real one. For now, it was enough. The next morning, Serena went back to the office for the first time since the assault. The building felt different. Though nothing had changed. Same marble lobby, same brass elevator doors, same receptionist with a polite smile, same smell of coffee from the 5th floor kitchen. But Serena was different. People looked at her and then looked away. Some with concern, some with curiosity, some with the hungry discomfort people have around pain they do not know how to name. Marcos saw her near the copier and stopped mid-step. Serena, he said softly, I am glad you are here. That was all. No questions, no pity. She almost cried because he made it ordinary. Thank you, she said. Later, in the break room, she overheard 2 assistants whispering. Did you hear she was staying at his penthouse? One said, that is convenient. The old Serena would have left. The old Serena would have made herself smaller, so no one had to feel embarrassed. This Serena placed her mug on the counter and turned. If you have a question about my work, ask HR. If you have a question about my private life, learn better manners. Silence fell. One assistant went red. The other stared at the floor. Serena took her coffee and walked out with shaking hands. In Massimo's office, she closed the door behind her and leaned against it. I heard, he said. Of course you did. Do you want me to speak to them? No, do you want HR to speak to them? Maybe. Later. He waited. She looked at her hands and laughed once. I sounded calm. You were calm. I was furious. Both can be true. She looked up. He had used her rope. That small thing steadied her more than any speech could have. For the next 3 months, Serena learned the exhausting discipline of rebuilding a life while people tried to pull her back into fear. It was not a clean transformation. Stories make healing look like a staircase. One brave decision, then another, then sunlight. Real healing was messier. Some mornings Serena woke in Massimo's guest suite and felt calm for 3 full minutes before memory returned. Some nights she woke sweating because she dreamed was standing at the foot of the bed, holding her credit report and laughing. Some days she organized evidence with a steady hand. Other days a slammed door in the hallway made her sit on the floor and press her palms to her ears. Dr. Reeves, the therapist Amelia recommended, told her that the nervous system does not care whether danger is over on paper. Your body learned to survive by staying alert. Dr. Reeves said, we do not shame that. We thank it. Then we teach it new information. Serena liked that. Thank the fear. Then teach it. It made fear feel less like weakness and more like a tired guard dog that had been working too long. She began to notice small things. How her shoulders rose whenever her phone buzzed. How she apologized when no apology was needed. How she asked permission before doing ordinary things. Can I make coffee? Can I open this window? Can I sit in the living room? One evening, Massimo heard her ask Elena if it was okay to use the dining table for paperwork. He did not laugh. He did not pity her. He simply said from the bookshelves, Serena, you do not have to ask to take up space here. The words were gentle, but they cracked something open. She went to the guest suite and cried into a towel, because she did not want anyone to hear. Later, Massimo knocked once. I made tea, he said through the door. It may be terrible. She wiped her face and opened the door, because terrible tea had become one of his safest kindnesses. They drank it on opposite ends of the sofa like they had that first night. He told her about growing up in a family where silence was currency and trust had to be earned like territory. She told him about painting, how she used to wake early on Sundays, put music on, and paint landscapes from memory. Not because she was brilliant, because color made her feel honest. Why did you stop? He asked. She stared into her mug. Henrique said I was not very good. Then he said it took up space. Then I packed it away. Massimo's face changed in the small way she had learned to read. Not rage this time. Sadness. I have a room downstairs, he said. Empty. It was meant to be a studio, I think. Good light. She gave him a look. Dante already mentioned your bad furniture. Dante talks too much. He said 2 sentences. That is 1 sentence too many. Serena smiled. It felt easier now. Not easy, easier. I do not want charity. It is not charity. Then, what is it? Massimo leaned forward. His eyes were dark and steady. A reminder. He convinced you to put pieces of yourself away. I would like to help you remember where they are." She did not know what to say. Kindness was difficult when it asked for nothing. Henrique's kindness had always come with a hook hidden inside. Massimo's kindness had boundaries that confused her more than danger. The legal case moved slowly, because real investigations do. Banks sent forms. The police requested records. Credit bureaus demanded proof. Loan companies treated Serena as if she were trying to escape responsibility until Amelia put her voice on conference calls and became so politely ruthless that one manager apologized 3 times in 5 minutes. Thomas Brennan, a fraud investigator assigned through the prosecutor's office, entered the story with a wrinkled suit and the exhausted eyes of a man who had seen too many people destroy one another for money. He reviewed Serena's timeline in a conference room at Bianchi Imports. She had built it herself. Every account, every date, every transfer, every message from Henrique that matched a financial event. Thomas turned page after page. "You did my job for me," he said at last. Serena did not know whether that was praise. "I wanted no gaps. There are always gaps. But you gave me bridges." He tapped one loan application. "The handwriting expert says this signature is not yours." Serena's throat closed. "That helps. It helps a lot. So does the listening device. So do the texts. So do the account transfers. But there is a complication." "What complication?" Thomas slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed emails. Fake emails. Messages Henrique had created and sent through a masked server, designed to look like Serena had authorized the accounts. "He planted a paper trail," Thomas said. "Not a perfect one, but enough to make things to see." Serena's stomach dropped. He knew this would happen. He planned for the possibility. Thomas looked tired, but not defeated. "That makes him worse. It also makes him easier to prove intentional once we break the pattern." "How?" "People who fake records usually make the same kind of mistake more than once." He pointed to the timestamps. "These were sent when your work badge shows you inside a restricted archive room, with no personal devices allowed. 2 were sent while your phone was connected to Bianchi's internal Wi-Fi in a different city." Another uses phrasing from Henrique's own messages. "We can show fabrication." Serena released a breath she did not know she held. Thomas softened. "Miss Costa, intimate partner identity theft often works because victims are embarrassed. They think, 'I should have known. I should have checked.' But trust is not stupidity. Access is the weapon. Trust is the door." Serena wrote that down too. Access is the weapon. Trust is the door. It was painful, but useful. That became important. If this story had to be part of her life, it would not be only pain. It would teach someone something. Maybe another woman would hear it and check her credit report. Maybe she would freeze a joint account before it was drained. Maybe she would understand that being monitored is not love. Maybe she would leave earlier. That thought gave Serena purpose when revenge alone would have burned her out. But Henrique kept striking from a distance. He sent a forged complaint to Bianchi Imports, claiming Serena had misused company resources to manipulate investigators. He created a fake photo, edited carefully, showing Serena embracing Massimo in the office months before she left Henrique. The image was good enough to fool anyone for a few minutes, long enough for whispers, long enough for shame. Massimo wanted to bury the source. Serena said no. "We answer with facts," she said, "not threats. They are attacking your reputation. Then my reputation will stand in daylight." So HR opened a formal review. Serena cooperated with everything. Badge logs, emails, camera footage, travel records. The fake image was disproven by metadata and a security camera angle, showing Serena was not even in the building at the time. The review cleared her completely. It also made something clear to everyone at Bianchi Imports. Serena Costa was not being protected because she was weak. She was being attacked because she was dangerous to a liar. That should have ended the office whispers. It did not. People rarely abandon a rumor just because truth arrives with documents. Some lowered their eyes when she entered the break room. Some stopped talking when she passed. One man from procurement, Richard Vale, began asking too many questions. Quiet questions. Polite questions. Was Serena still staying at the penthouse? Did Massimo change security rotations? Was Dante assigned to her full-time now? Serena noticed because she had learned to notice. Survival had sharpened her. One evening, she found Richard in the records room, with a folder he had no reason to hold. When he saw her, he smiled too quickly. "Looking for shipping revisions," he said. Serena looked at the label on the folder. "In personnel access logs." The smile slipped. "Must have grabbed the wrong file." Must have. She let him leave. Then she photographed the folder, the shelf, the time on the wall clock, and sent everything to Amelia and Dante. She did not accuse. She documented. That was another lesson. Anger can alert you, but evidence protects you. Dante reviewed security footage. Amelia reviewed access logs. Massimo reviewed Richard's employment history and found nothing obvious. Too clean, Dante said. Too clean could be its own kind of dirt. 3 days later, a security schedule changed without authorization. A side entrance camera went down for 9 minutes. A black envelope appeared in Serena S. apartment building lobby, slipped under the superintendent S. door, with her name written on it. Inside was a copy of a page from her therapy intake form. Not the full file. Just enough to violate. Just enough to say, even your healing can be watched. Serena sat at her kitchen table with the paper in front of her, hands flat on the wood. Massimo stood across from her, expression carved from stone. Dante was already downstairs with the superintendent. Amelia was calling the clinic. Dr. Reeves had tears in her voice when she called Serena personally. Your therapy notes were not accessed, she said. The intake form was part of an insurance packet sent through a third-party billing system. We are investigating. I am so sorry. Serena believed her. She also felt sick. Henrique had once made her feel that privacy was a thing she had to earn. Now someone else had reached into a room where she was supposed to be safest. Massimo said nothing for a long moment after the call ended. Then he said, "This is Carlotti." Through Richard. Serena asked, "Maybe. Find out." He looked at her. "I will. Legally." His jaw tightened. "Serena. Legally," she repeated. "If he is an employee and he is selling information, I want him exposed." Not vanished. Exposed. Massimo breathed through his nose. You know how to make revenge very bureaucratic. It lasts longer that way. The internal investigation became another thread, and it added pressure to every day. Serena the phone, Sophia. Went to work knowing someone inside the building might be feeding information to the people watching her. She checked doors. She logged strange moments. She stopped leaving her desk unlocked even to get coffee. But she refused to disappear. Richard Vale became nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. He used a company printer to copy a shipment schedule that had been watermarked differently for each department. The watermark led to him. The schedule later appeared in a message Dante intercepted through one of Massimo's doc contacts. It was enough. Massimo called Serena into his office late that afternoon. Richard was there, pale and sweating, with Dante standing behind him. "Tell her," Massimo said. Richard looked at Serena, then at the floor. "I owed money to Henrique," she asked. "No, to men connected to Carlotti. Gambling. Cards. It got out of hand, so you sold them access to my life." He flinched. "I did not know they would use it like that." Serena stared at him. She was tired of that sentence. "I did not know. I did not mean. I was scared. I was desperate. It was never enough. You knew you were selling information about a woman who had already been stalked and assaulted." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "They said it was business." "I am a person," Serena said. "Not business." The room went silent. Even Massimo looked away for a moment, as if the sentence had struck him too. Richard was turned over to the authorities for corporate theft, privacy violations, and conspiracy connected to the Carlotti investigation. Massimo wanted to do more. Serena saw it. "Do not," she said after Richard was let out. "He is already ruined. Ruined is not the same as paid." "No, but if you punish him your way, Juliana wins. She proves you can still be moved by fear for me. I am moved by fear for you." "I know," Serena stepped closer. "But I need you to be moved by respect for me too." That night, Massimo did not come to her apartment. He asked if she wanted space. She said yes. He gave it. That was love too. Not the dramatic part. Not the part people make songs about. The quieter part. The part where someone wants to hold you but respects the closed door. Serena painted until after midnight. The painting was angry, red, gray, and a line of black cutting through yellow. She named it Access. She did not like it. She kept it anyway. The case against Henrique strengthened. The grand jury indicted him on identity theft, fraud, forgery, stalking, evidence fabrication, and conspiracy. His parents posted bail. Serena saw them outside the courthouse once. His mother looked at her with devastation and accusation mixed together. For a moment, guilt tried to return. Then Amelia touched Serena's elbow and said quietly, "Compassion does not require self-erasure." Another rope. The trial began in October under a gray sky. The courthouse smelled of rain, polished wood, and old Sophia. Serena had imagined that justice would feel strong. It did not. It felt fluorescent. It felt like a metal detector and a plastic bin for her phone. It felt like strangers reading the worst year of her life from stapled documents. Massimo came in a dark suit and sat 3 rows behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence, far enough not to seem like he was directing her. Dante sat near the doors. Giuliana Rossi appeared once in the hallway, not entering the courtroom, only watching from a distance in a charcoal coat with red gloves. Serena pretended not to see her. Henrique looked smaller in court than he had in her apartment. That surprised her. Without the dark room, without his hand around her wrist, without her phone in his palm, he looked like a man wearing the memory of power. But when his eyes found her, the old coldness returned. The prosecutor began with the timeline. The first false credit application, the bank withdrawals, the forged signatures, the fake emails, the listening device, the edited photograph, the complaint to HR, the destroyed apartment, the transfers tied to Carlotti's shell accounts. Each piece was placed before the jury like a stone. One stone did not build a wall. Together, they did. Detective Morrison testified first. Then Thomas Brennan explained the financial records. He did not dramatize. He did not need to. This was not one impulsive act. He said this was a pattern of identity misuse, document fabrication, and coercive control. Amelia sat behind Serena and squeezed her shoulder once. The defense tried to make Henrique look desperate, wounded, confused by love. They brought up his career struggles, his debts, his fear of losing Serena. His mother cried quietly into a tissue as if tears could rewrite bank records. Then Serena was called. Walking to the witness stand felt longer than any hallway she had ever crossed. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. The truth. Such a small word for something that had cost so much. The prosecutor asked about the beginning. Serena told them about the gallery, the sketchbook, the location sharing, the phone checks, the isolation. She spoke clearly. Not perfectly. Her voice shook twice. She kept going. Then came the night he hit her. She described his hand around her wrist. The demand, the silence, the slap. She did not look at Henrique while she said it. She looked at the jury, because she had not come there to convince him. She had come to stop protecting his image. The prosecutor showed the photographs Dr. Caruso had taken. Serena heard someone in the jury box inhale sharply. Shame rose in her throat, old and automatic. Then she remembered Amelia's words. Shame belongs to the person who harms, not the person who survives. She let the shame pass through without obeying it. Then the defense attorney stood. He was polite. That made him more dangerous. Miss Costa, he said. Isn't it true that your relationship with Mr. Silva was already troubled because of your growing attachment to your employer? Massimo did not move. Serena felt the whole room tighten. My relationship was troubled because Mr. Silva was controlling me, she said. Please answer the question. I am. Did you have feelings for Mr. Bianca before leaving Mr. Silva? Serena looked at Henrique then. He looked almost hopeful, as if shame might still be a leash around her throat. She turned back to the lawyer. My feelings did not make him hit me. My feelings did not make him forge my signature. My feelings did not make him put a listening device under my desk. My feelings did not make him fabricate records to make a crime look like consent. And my feelings did not make him sell my private information to people who used it to threaten me. The prosecutor hid a smile. Massimo lowered his head. Henrique's jaw hardened. The defense attorney tried again. You moved into Mr. Bianca's weapon house immediately after the alleged assault. I stayed in a guest suite after calling him for help. A powerful man with known criminal associations. The judge warned him. Serena answered anyway. A man who called a doctor, preserved evidence, and respected my decision to go to the police. The courtroom went quiet. When she stepped down from the witness stand, her knees felt weak. Dante stood slightly, then sat again when he saw she could walk. Massimo did not reach for her in the courtroom. He understood the importance of space there. After closing arguments, the jury deliberated less than 4 hours, guilty on all major counts. When the verdict was read, Henrique's face collapsed. His mother sobbed. Serena felt no triumph, only the strange emptiness that comes after surviving a storm and realizing the house is still standing. But every room must be repaired. Outside the courthouse, cold air touched her face. Massimo waited beside the car. It is over, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. A part of it is. She knew what he meant. The legal part had ended. The healing had not. Henrique was sentenced to years in custody. The fraudulent debts were ruled invalid, though removing them from her credit report would take time. Richard Vale pleaded guilty later and agreed to testify against 2 Carlotti intermediaries. That made Juliana angry, although she never said so directly. Instead, the Carlotti family stopped one of Massimo's cleanest shipments at the docks. Not illegal goods, not contraband, a legal shipment of handcrafted marble tables, antique mirrors, and private wine collections. Every crate was held, every document questioned. Inspectors who had never cared before suddenly cared deeply about ink color, stamp placement, and wood treatment certificates. The delay cost Massimo hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties. A smaller client canceled a contract. Another demanded reassurances. The message was obvious. Loving Serena was starting to cost him. Serena found out from Marcos. Not Massimo. That was their next fight. She walked into his office and closed the door. Were you going to tell me? Massimo looked up slowly. About what? The shipment, the canceled contract, the penalties. His face gave him away. I did not want you to think that I am a liability. No. Then what? That my world is collecting payment from you for being near me. Serena stood very still. And is it? He looked at her for a long time. Yes, the honesty hurt, but it also held. Then do not hide the invoice, she said. If there is a cost, I need to see it. I do not want you carrying guilt for my enemy's choices. And I do not want you carrying consequences in silence while pretending love is free. He looked away. It should be. It is not. Not for anyone. Mine cost me my denial. Yours costs you control. Maybe this costs both of us comfort. Massimo leaned back in his chair, exhausted. You make very difficult things sound clean. They are not clean. They are just true. After that, Massimo told her more. Not everything in detail, not names that would endanger people, but enough. Enough for Serena to understand that Carlotti pressure was increasing, because Juliana wanted to test whether Massimo would sacrifice business stability to protect his personal life. Enough for Serena to understand that love in Massimo's world could become leverage if they let fear choose for them. Enough for her to make an informed choice. That was all she had asked for, a choice with open eyes. The cost came again 1 week later. This time it was not a shipment delay. It was a person, Paulie Romano, the night guard at Massimo's North Warehouse, called Dante at 3 a.m. because he smelled smoke near the archive room. By the time firefighters arrived, flames had climbed the old insulation and blackened half the ceiling. Paulie tried to pull boxes of paper records away from the fire before the smoke knocked him down. He survived. But survival is not the same as untouched. Serena arrived at the hospital with Massimo just before dawn. Paulie lay in a narrow bed with an oxygen tube under his nose, face gray, eyes embarrassed and tired. His wife, Marta, sat beside him, holding his hand so tightly her knuckles had gone white. I am sorry, Massimo told her. The words were quiet. Marta looked up at him. She was small, older than Serena expected, with silver at her temples and the kind of anger that did not need to stand. Your sorry does not make him breathe easier, she said. The room went still. Dante looked down. Massimo did not defend himself. He did not say he had not ordered the fire. He did not say Carlotti had done it. He did not say Paulie knew the risks of working for him. He simply said, no, it does not. Serena watched something move across his face. Not humiliation, not only guilt, recognition, the kind that changes a man if he lets it. Outside the hospital room, Massimo stopped near a vending machine and stared at the floor. This is what I tried to keep away from you, he said. Serena stood beside him. This was here before me. But they are pressing because of you. They are pressing because you have something they can use. That is what I mean. She turned toward him. No, you mean I am the reason. He closed his eyes. That is not what I meant. Then say it right. He opened his eyes, tired, afraid. They are using my love for you, because I have lived in a world where people use anything tender as leverage. She nodded. That is true, and it may get worse. That may also be true. Does that not scare you? It terrifies me. Then why are you still standing here? Serena looked through the glass wall of the hospital room. Marta was wiping Paulie's forehead with a damp cloth. Because running from danger is not the same as choosing safety. I am not going to pretend your world is harmless. But I am also not going to let Juliana or Henrique or anyone else decide what I love. Massimo's breath left him slowly. You make courage sound like paperwork. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is signing the next form even when your hands shake. A tired laugh escaped him. Lawyers first. Always. But that morning did not end neatly. Marta refused Massimo's offer of a private recovery room. She refused the envelope Dante tried to leave for expenses. She looked Serena in the eye and said, You seem like a good woman. Do not let powerful men make their guilt look like generosity. Serena carried that sentence home like a stone in her pocket. It was unfair in some ways. It was also not entirely wrong, she told Massimo later. He did not argue. He sat in his study, listening, one hand over his mouth. She thinks I buy forgiveness, he said. Do you? He looked at her. I hope not. Then make sure you do not. That became another turning point. Massimo paid Paulius medical bills through the company insurance channel, not a secret envelope. He documented the support. He offered paid recovery leave with no strings. He did not ask for gratitude. He did not visit again until Marta gave permission. It was less dramatic than sending cash. It was more respectful, Serena noticed. So did Dante. About time, Dante muttered one evening when Massimo signed the revised employee protection policy. Massimo threw a pen at him. Dante caught it without looking. Serena laughed for the first time all day. In December, Serena booked a trip to Aruba. Alone, Massimo's eyebrows rose when she told him. Alone, that is the point. I did not say it was a bad point. Your face did. My face is concerned by nature. She laughed. I need to go somewhere no one knows me. Somewhere I can wake up, and what I want to do without checking anyone else's mood. He smiled then, soft, proud. That sounds like freedom. It was 10 days of sun, salt, and watercolor light. Serena slept late, walked barefoot on sand, ate dinner with a book open beside her, painted sunsets that looked too bright to be real. On the last evening, she sat near the water and realized she was happy, not because no one loved her, not because someone powerful protected her, because she belonged to herself, and that was enough. She sent Massimo a photo of the sunset. His reply came quickly. Beautiful. Like the artist. She held the phone to her chest and smiled, like a woman finally ready to tell the truth. She missed him. Not his protection. Him, his terrible tea. His restraint. His patience. The way he listened as if every word she said deserved a place in the room. When she returned, wildflowers waited on her desk. Not roses. Nothing possessive. A riot of color, like her paintings. The card said, "Welcome home." M, beneath the vase, however tucked between two file folders, was a slip of black paper. The words were written in elegant ink. Freedom makes people careless. Serena did not panic. That was the first thing she noticed. Her heart sped up. Her mouth went dry, but she did not break. She photographed the note. She placed it in an evidence sleeve. Then she walked into Massimo's office, placed the sleeve on his desk, and said, "Juliana." Massimo looked at the paper. Every trace of softness left his face. Yes, why now? Because Henrique is contained. Meaning the Carlottes no longer need him to reach you. And what do they need? Massimo looked at the note again. To know whether reaching you reaches me. Serena sat down across from him. Then we make sure the answer is complicated. For the first time that day, he almost smiled. You are very bad at being intimidated. I had practice. 6 weeks later, on a morning that had been ordinary until it was not, Serena woke in Massimo's penthouse by choice instead of fear. They had cooked dinner badly the night before. Massimo burned the garlic and blamed the pan. Serena told him powerful men should learn to accept responsibility for onions. Dante passed through the kitchen and said both of them should be banned from open flame. It was a small evening, but small evenings had become precious to Serena because they were not built around survival. In the morning, sunlight crossed the bed. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. Her body tightened before her mind caught up. Then she read the message preview. This is Deputy Marshal Richards. Please call immediately. Henrique Silva has escaped custody. For 1 second, Serena's mind refused the words. Escaped custody. Henrique. Massimo woke as soon as she sat up. What is it? She handed him the phone. His expression changed so fast it was like watching a door slam shut. Within minutes, the penthouse was moving. The cameras checked. Cars repositioned. Dante on the phone, already angry before he knew where to aim the anger. Deputy Richards arrived 2 hours later. She sat in Massimo's study with Serena, Massimo, Dante, and Amelia on speakerphone. Silva escaped during a medical transfer, she said. We are investigating whether he had assistance. He is dangerous, especially to you. Serena folded her hands so no one would see them tremble. What kind of threats did he make? Richards did not soften it. He said, Mr. Bianchi stole you. He said you lied in court. He said if he could speak to you alone, you would understand. He also said if he could not have his old life back, no one should have a future. Massimo said, protective custody. Serena turned to him. No, Serena. No. Richards leaned forward. Miss Costa, relocation is recommended. I understand that. I am still saying no. Massimo stood. This is not about pride. Serena stood too. Do not talk to me like I am being stubborn because I refuse to disappear. His face changed. She saw the fear under the command. Real fear. Human fear. I am trying to keep you alive, he said, and I am trying to keep the life I fought for, Serena answered. I will increase security. I will cooperate. I will be careful. But I will not let him control my life from outside prison. Richard studied her. Then we use a visible routine with protective detail. But refusing hiding does not mean refusing help. Serena nodded. I know. That was growth too. The old Serena might have mistaken independence for doing everything alone. The new Serena knew help could be wisdom. For the next week, security became her shadow. Dante drove behind her. Marshals rotated near Bianchi Imports. Serena still went to work. She still attended therapy. She still went to painting class. Even though Dante sat outside the classroom with one arm crossed and terrified a roomful of retirees learning watercolor washes, fear returned, but it did not rule every hour. Sometimes it rose suddenly, in a slowing car or a phone buzzing from a hidden pocket. Each time, Serena named what was true. I am here. I am not alone. I can choose my next step. But Henrique was not the only danger moving through the city. 2 days after the escape, a Bianchi shipment was stopped at the docks. Every crate was held, every document questioned. By noon, the delay had cost Mono 6 figures. By evening, one client threatened to cancel. The next morning, 2 trucks were vandalized in a secured lot. No one was hurt. That was the point. Carlotti was not trying to start a war yet. Giuliana was writing on the walls. She requested a meeting that afternoon. Massimo told Serena because he had promised. Good, Serena said. I am coming. Absolutely not. Serena raised an eyebrow. Try again. He exhaled through his nose. I do not want you near her. That is honest, but not a decision. So Serena went. Giuliana was waiting at the same quiet restaurant, wearing a black suit and a single gold bracelet. On the table lay a small white envelope. Miss Costa, Giuliana said. You look well for a woman being hunted. Serena sat down. You look comfortable for a woman who sends photographs into other people's bedrooms. Giuliana smiled. Direct. I like that. She claimed she had not helped Henrique escape. Serena did not believe her completely, but she listened. Then Giuliana slid the envelope across the table. Inside was a photograph of Richard Vale entering a warehouse 2 nights before. One of yours, Giuliana said to Massimo. Not mine. She offered a trade. She would pass information if Henrique came through old debt channels. In return, Massimo would release 2 dock inspectors from his influence and allow Carlotti movement through Pier 12 for 1 month. Serena looked at Massimo. What is Pier 12? A route, he said. For what? He did not answer fast enough. Serena turned back to Giuliana. No, Giuliana's eyebrows lifted. You do not even know what you are refusing. I know enough. You are asking him to trade public safety for private advantage. You do not get to use my fear to buy a route. For the first time, Giuliana seemed genuinely amused. You are inconvenient. So, I have heard. Serena leaned forward. If you hear where Henrique is, you will still tell us. Because if he hurts someone after you had information, it will not be pressure anymore. It will be blood on your hands. And you may not be moral, Giuliana, but you are practical. Dead civilians bring police. Police bring audits. Audits bring noise. You hate noise. Giuliana held Serena's gaze. Then she smiled slowly. Massimo, I see why you are in trouble. On the way back, Henrique called. Serena put him on speaker. You sit with her now too, he breathed. Bianca's little queen at the table. Turn yourself in, Serena said. You sound brave with him beside you. I sound brave because I am done being afraid of your voice. He demanded she come alone. She refused. When he snapped, you do not say no to me, she answered. I just did, and ended the call. Her hands shook afterward. That was all right. She could be strong and shaking. Before Henrique called again, Carlotti pressure turned physical. Dante followed a lead on the flower delivery service that had handled bouquets to the penthouse. A black SUV clipped his car at an intersection near the river and vanished into traffic. No explosion, no cinematic crash, just metal twisting, glass cracking, and one clean hit at the driver's side. Serena was at work when Massimo got the call. She saw the blood leave his face through the glass wall of his office. Dante, he said. At the hospital. Dante was awake. Because of course he was. He had a bandage above his eyebrow, bruised ribs, and one arm in a sling. This is unnecessary, he said. Serena stared at him. You are in a hospital bed. Observation. You have stitches. Decoration. Massimo stood at the foot of the bed, too still. Who? He asked. Dante's humor faded. Driver was masked. Plates stolen. But the lead was good. Flower service records were altered. Someone was paid through 3 intermediaries. Massimo looked like rage had become a language under his skin. Dante saw it and said, "Do not do anything stupid. You are lying in a hospital bed because of me." Dante snorted, then winced. "I am lying in a hospital bed because somebody hit my car. Do not make everything about yourself. It is unattractive." Then his voice lowered. "I chose this work. Paulie chose less than he deserved. Serena chose none of it. Focus there." Outside the room, Serena told Massimo, "Discipline." He closed his eyes. "I know, do you? I am learning." That night, in the hospital parking lot, rain misting the pavement, he admitted, "I do not know what to do with fear except control the room." Serena touched his coat. "Then start by naming it." He breathed once. "I am afraid." "Me too." The next morning, Henrique sent the message. "Parking garage. Tomorrow, 6:30. Come alone or I start sending photos." Attached was an image of Serena's sister leaving her house 3 states away. Serena called Richards, Amelia and Massimo into a meeting. Dante joined by video from the hospital despite everyone telling him not to. "I am fine," he said. "You are wearing a sling," Serena said. "It is a fashionable sling." Richards looked over her glasses. "Mr. Russo, if you interrupt operational planning to make jokes, I will mute you." Serena placed Henrica's message on the screen. "We use it." Massimo looked like he wanted to break the table. "No, he threatened my sister, which is why you do not go near him, which is why he needs to be caught before he reaches anyone else." Richard said they could set the location, wire Serena, and position officers at every exit. Massimo turned on her. "You cannot seriously consider using her as bait," Serena answered before Richards could. "Do not speak about me like I am not in the room." He stared at her. "I could lose you." "Yes," he flinched. "That is not comforting. It is honest. Loving someone means there is risk. Controlling them does not remove risk. It only damages the love." After a long silence, Massimo looked at Richards. "Every angle is covered," Dante said through the screen. "I will be there." Serena said, "Absolutely not." Dante smiled faintly. "Interesting. Now you see how it feels." The next evening, Serena wore a recording device beneath her coat. The parking garage beneath Bianchi Imports smelled of concrete, oil, and winter rain. A replacement security lead walked behind her. Plainclothes marshals waited in parked cars. Massimo sat in a vehicle near the exit, hating every second, honoring his promise. Dante's voice came through her earpiece from the surveillance van. "Camera 4 has you. Do not insult his masculinity too early. He is more useful talking," Serena murmured. "Your medical leave is very peaceful." "I heard that." Henrique appeared on level 3, thinner, older, eyes bright with desperation. "Serena," he said softly, "stop there. I just want to talk." "Then talk." "Not with all of them listening. If you wanted privacy, you should not have put a listening device in my apartment." His face twitched. "Good." The recorder caught that. He tried apology. She named control. He tried love. She named fear. He said Bianca had taken her. Serena said, "No, you lost me when you hit me." He said she was already Massimo's. Serena answered, "I was mine. I just forgot for a while." Then she walked him through the truth. The loans, the forged signatures, the fake emails, the device under the desk, the information sold to Carlotti. Henrique broke. "I did it for us," he shouted. "I needed money because you looked at me like I was failing. Because your fancy boss made me feel like nothing." Serena let the words settle. "So you punished me. I loved you." "No, you needed me beneath you so you could feel tall." His hand moved toward his coat pocket. Dante's voice cut through the earpiece. "Hand, right pocket." Henrique pulled a small knife, not with skill, but with desperation. A marshal struck his wrist before he crossed half the distance. The knife clattered across the concrete. Henrique hit the ground, screaming Serena's name as they cuffed him. Massimo appeared from the stairwell, moving like wrath given a body. Serena stepped in front of him. "No, he pulled a knife on you, and he is in cuffs." She took his face in both hands and forced him to look at her. "Do not give him this. Do not let him turn you into the thing he said you were." Massimo breathed hard, then pressed his forehead to hers. Behind them, Henrique screamed until an officer shut the car door. "It is over," Massimo whispered. Serena looked toward the patrol car. "Now it is over because I say it is." Then Dante's voice came through the radio. Sharp, boss. Penthouse alarm triggered 6 minutes ago. Private elevator access. It used an internal code. Serena felt the cold come back. Not Henrique. Not the garage. Something closer. Someone had opened the safest place from inside. We go together, she said. This time. Massimo did not argue. By the time they reached the penthouse, the intruder was gone. Nothing obvious had been stolen. Elena stood in the kitchen in her robe, pale and furious at herself. I heard nothing. Massimo touched her shoulder. This is not your fault. It is my house to keep, Serena said quietly. Our house. Elena's eyes filled. Dante reviewed the system with one hand, his sling poorly hidden under his coat. The private elevator had opened for 41 seconds. The code belonged to Luca Moretti, one of Massimo's oldest men. Not a strategist. Not family. Worse, familiar. A man who had eaten at Elena's table. A man who had once driven Serena to court. Check again, Massimo said. Dante did. Twice, the answer did not change. Luca had vanished. On Serena's pillow lay a fresh black rose and a note printed from a label maker. The first door was never Henrique. Serena stared at it for a long time. Henrique had been loud, cruel, personal. This was different. This was a chess move. This was Juliana saying she could reach the place they called safe. In the study, Massimo stood with both hands on the desk, head bowed. Do not, Serena said. He laughed once. You do not know what I was going to say. Yes, I do. He looked up. Luca was in my house. He was near you. He put a rose on your pillow. And you want paperwork. No, I want discipline. That stopped him. If I find him before the police do. Then you decide what kind of man you are becoming. In the morning, Juliana sent an invitation through Amelia's office. Gallery opening, 7 p.m. 2 nights from now. No weapons inside. Serena laughed. She is inviting me. Massimo did not. No, we are past that word. They went with marshals, lawyers, Dante, and enough security to make the art collector, hosting the event, sweat through his linen collar. Juliana stood before a red canvas. Miss Costa, you accepted. You expected me to. I hoped. Massimo stood beside Serena, silent as a blade. Juliana admitted nothing, then revealed the truth she wanted them to carry. Luca had come because Massimo's father left debts behind. Not money, people, promises. His brother was Paolo Moretti, Juliana said. Your father used him. Your father let him go to prison alone. Luca has been waiting years for someone to admit the debt. The room shifted. Serena saw the hitland in Massimo's face. This was not only about Henrique anymore. It was legacy. Wrought under marble. Juliana handed Serena a flash drive. Records, your father's. Paolo's name is there. Others too. If you want Luca, start with the ghosts in your own house. Why give this to us? Serena asked. Juliana's smile was thin. Because war is loud. And you were right. I hate noise. The drive held ledgers, scanned letters, payments and names. Men abandoned. Families paid off. A prison sentence shifted onto Paolo Moretti to protect a Bianca route years earlier. Massimo read it in silence. I did not know, he said. Serena remembered every person who had used those words. I did not know could be excuse or beginning. The difference was what came next. Now you do. What do I do? Tell the truth to the people harmed. Dante inhaled sharply. Massimo did not look away. That could weaken me. Yes, Juliana may use it. Probably, and you still think I should. Serena's voice softened. You cannot build a better future while hiding graves under the floor. That week, Massimo called 3 families. The first hung up. The second cried. The third cursed his father. Then cursed him. Then stayed long enough to hear. You were owed the truth. I am sorry it took this long. Luca was found 2 days later in a motel outside the city. By marshals. Not by Massimo's men. He confessed to giving Carlotti access codes, but insisted he never meant for Serena to be hurt. Serena did not visit him. She sent one written statement. Your pain is real. So is your responsibility. Juliana still won something. She had forced Massimo to open old wounds. She had shown the city that Bianca's clean image stood on foundations built by dirty hands. 2 days after Luca's arrest. Bellwether, the client representing nearly 20% of Bianchi Imports' annual revenue, canceled a 5-year contract. The official reason was instability. The real reason arrived in a message from Juliana. Accountability is expensive. Serena found Massimo that night in his father's private archive, surrounded by ledgers. I lost the Bellwether account, he said. I heard. People will say I weakened the company for ghosts. Did you? He looked at her. I do not know yet. Then let me ask differently. Did you tell the truth because it was right? Or because I asked you to? He was quiet for a long time. At first, because you asked. And now he looked at the cabinets, at the family name stamped into leather spines. Now because I cannot unknow it. Serena nodded. Then it is no longer just my conscience in your voice. He looked tired and almost smiled. You are very inconvenient, so I have heard. I lost millions, yes, and you are still here. She took his hand. I am not here because you are powerful. I am here because you are becoming honest. Do not confuse the two. The loss of Bellwether did not stay inside conference rooms. It moved through the company like a draft under a locked door. Vendors called to ask if contracts were still safe. 2 senior managers requested private meetings with Massimo and asked whether his personal life had become a business risk. One of them, a gray-haired director named Caldwell, did not even bother to hide what he meant. With respect, Sir, Miss Costa is now a pressure point, he said. Serena was in the room, because Mazripol had promised no more decisions about her without her. Caldwell glanced at her, as if she were a fragile object placed too close to a flame. This is not personal. Serena folded her hands on the table. It is always interesting when people say that, right before treating a person like a liability. Caldwell flushed. Massimo's voice turned cold. Choose your next sentence very carefully. Serena touched the table once. Not his hand. The table. A quiet reminder. Discipline. Massimo stopped. Caldwell cleared his throat and suggested that Serena take an extended leave until the Carlotti pressure passed. Paid, of course, he said, as if payment made erasure polite. Serena looked at him and felt an old familiar pull. Make it easier. Disappear. Be grateful. Let other people decide where your presence becomes inconvenient. Then she looked at Massimo. He was waiting, not answering for her, not rescuing her from the insult. Waiting. Serena turned back to Caldwell. No, I will not take leave because criminals found my name useful. If my performance is poor, document it. If my presence creates a security issue, design a security answer. But do not call exile protection. The meeting ended with Caldwell silent and Massimo's jaw tight enough to ache. In the hallway, Serena's legs nearly gave out. Massimo guided her into an empty office, but did not close the door until she nodded. You were magnificent, he said. She laughed weakly. I was nauseous. Both can be true. We are not overusing that sentence. Not today. The next blow came from outside the company. The Women's Center postponed Serena's second workshop after an anonymous caller claimed the event would bring danger to everyone attending. The director, a warm woman named Grace, called with shame in her voice. I know this is unfair, Grace said, but some of these women are already afraid. I cannot risk making the room feel unsafe. Serena told her she understood, then hung up and sat very still at her kitchen table. This was Juliana's real victory. Not the lost contract, not the money, this. Making Serena wonder whether her courage endangered people who were already trying to survive. For the first time in weeks, she wanted to cancel everything. Massimo came over and found the printed workshop flyers stacked beside her cold coffee. Tell me what happened. She did. He listened. Then he said, we can secure the building. Serena shook her head. That is not the point. Then what is? The point is that I wanted my pain to become useful. Now it feels dangerous. Massimo sat across from her. It is useful because it is dangerous to the people who need silence. She looked at him. That sounds like something I would say. I am learning from a very inconvenient woman. 2 days later, Grace called again. The workshop would continue, but online first, with cameras off for anyone who wanted privacy. Serena almost cried when 53 women joined. Some used first names, some used initials, some said nothing at all. Serena spoke to black squares and muted microphones, and still she felt them there. She told them danger was real, but silence was not safety. She told them to write down account numbers, freeze credit, photograph documents, tell one trusted person, and believe discomfort before it became proof. At the end, messages appeared in the chat. I needed this. I thought it was love. I am checking my report tonight. Serena saved none of the names. Privacy mattered, but she saved the feeling. Juliana had tried to shut the room. Serena had simply moved the door. Months passed. Serena returned to her Westbrook apartment after Henrique's recapture, and the penthouse breach were fully documented. Massimo offered guards outside. She accepted for a few nights, then asked them to move across the street, then asked for check-ins instead, step by step, not reckless, not hidden. She kept therapy. She kept painting. She kept working. Amelia asked if she would speak at a financial safety workshop for women leaving controlling relationships. At first, Serena said no. Then she thought of the woman she had been. The woman who had not checked her credit report because she trusted the wrong person with the right information. So she went. She talked about shared passwords, joint accounts, location tracking, privacy, credit freezes, and the danger of love that makes you smaller. Trust should not require you to surrender all access to yourself, she said, and privacy is not betrayal. A woman in the back cried silently. Another took notes so hard her pen tore the paper. Afterward, one woman whispered, "I thought I was being dramatic." Serena held her and said, "You are allowed to trust your discomfort." That night, over dinner in her small apartment, she told Massimo about it. He listened quietly. "You turned what he did into protection for someone else." Maybe, not maybe. He was too large for her kitchen chair, sleeves rolled up, a towel over one shoulder because he had insisted on washing dishes and used too much soap. The sight made her absurdly fond. This man could intimidate half the city, but he still did not know where she kept the cutting boards. "You look pleased with yourself," she said. "I am excellent at dishes." "You flooded the sink." "The sink lacked discipline," she laughed. Then the laughter softened. "I love you," she said. "It was not planned. It simply arrived." Massimo went still. Serena did not rush to fill the silence. Finally, he set the towel down. "Say it again." "No. Once was brave. Twice is showing off." He smiled slowly. "Serena." She crossed the tiny kitchen and placed her hands on his chest. "I love you. Not because you rescued me. Not because you made the fear stop. You did not. I had to do that. I love you because you stayed while I did it. Because you learned to tell me the truth even when it might cost you. Because you let me choose." His hands came to her waist. "Careful even now." "I love you," he said. "I have loved you longer than I had any right to. But I love you differently now. Differently. Before, I loved you like something I had to keep myself from wanting, then like someone I had to protect. Now I love you like a woman who could leave, and still chooses to open the door." Tears stung her eyes. "That is the only kind of love I want." Their relationship did not become simple. Real love rarely does. Serena moved reporting lines, so Massimo was no longer her direct supervisor. Her promotion was reviewed by an external board member, so no one could dismiss her competence as favoritism. She insisted on it. Massimo hated that anyone might question her value, but he supported it. "Let them question," Serena said. "I have answers." Spring came slowly. Serena's first gallery showing opened on a rainy Friday night. Her watercolors hung on white walls, some like storms, some like dawn. One painting, deep sapphire bleeding into black with a thin line of white at the center, was called Room to Breathe. Massimo stood before it for a long time. "This is the night you called me," he said. "Yes. It hurts to look at. It hurt to paint." Later, Serena's sister cried in front of 3 paintings, which made Serena cry, which made Elena produce tissues from nowhere like a magician. Dante bought an angry red painting because, he said, he had a hallway. Near the end of the night, Juliana appeared without entourage. She stopped before Room to Breathe. "You made something beautiful out of fear." "No," Serena said. "I made something honest." Beauty was optional. Juliana smiled faintly. "There is a lesson in that, for both of us." Maybe. Juliana looked toward Massimo. "He will ask you soon." Serena's heart skipped. "You know that. Men like Massimo look at rings before calendars." Juliana left without buying anything. But the next morning, the gallery reported that an anonymous collector had contributed 3 works and requested the artist choose the Women's Center that would receive a matching donation. Serena did not send that one back. She wrote Juliana one note. "Better again. By summer." Oh. Serena had learned that peace could be active. Sometimes peace was opening your own bank account and reading every line. Sometimes it was saying no without explaining for 20 minutes. Sometimes it was letting someone love you and still keeping your own key, your own friends, your own name on your own documents. Sometimes it was forgiving yourself for not leaving sooner. One evening, almost a year after the first night at the penthouse, Massimo asked Serena to meet him there after work. The penthouse windows were open to the summer night. On the table sat terrible tea in the same 2 mugs they had used that first night. Serena laughed softly. "You are sentimental. I am strategic." "That is a lie. A sentimental strategy." He lowered himself to one knee before the windows, where the city watched and did not matter. In the velvet box was a sapphire ring, deep blue, surrounded by small diamonds. "Serena Costa," he said, voice unsteady in a way the world would never hear. "I loved you in silence. Then I loved you in fear. Then I learned to love you in freedom. I do not want to own you. I do not want to rescue you from yourself. I want to stand beside you. Will you marry me? Serena looked at the ring, then at her hand, one finger still faintly stained with paint. Love and selfhood, both. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Massimo, I will marry you. Later on the floor by the window, she said. Henrique tried to break me. Massimo's arm tightened around her. He failed. No, he changed me. I will not give him credit for my strength. That is mine. But I will not pretend I am the same woman. Somewhere below were people beginning, ending, hiding, surviving, choosing. Serena hoped her story would find them somehow. Not as a fantasy where a powerful man fixes everything. The truth was harder and better. Help matters. Evidence matters. Therapy matters. Financial independence matters. Community matters. And love, real love, does not ask you to hand over your life as proof. It helps you hold it more firmly. 3 nights after the engagement, a package arrived at the gallery, where Room to Breathe still hung beneath soft white lights. No return address. Inside was a framed sketch of Serena and Massimo standing at the penthouse window. Behind them, almost invisible in the watercolor shadows, bloomed a single black rose. On the back someone had written, "Welcome to the Bianchi family. Serena, now the real war begins." Massimo went still. Dante cursed under his breath. Serena looked at the version of herself someone had tried to turn into a warning. Slowly, she set the frame upright under the gallery light. "No," she said. "No," Massimo asked. "Not war. Not if they expect me to be afraid before the first move." He looked at her, danger sharp around him and pride softening his eyes. "What do you want to do?" Serena smiled with the calm of a woman who had learned Fierce language and no longer mistook it for truth. "First, we make a copy for evidence. Then we invite Giuliana Rossi to my next gallery show." The next show was smaller, brighter, and watched by more cameras than any art opening reasonably needed. Serena displayed the threatening sketch behind glass with a small white label. Untitled threat. Unknown sender. Evidence copy retained. Giuliana read it and laughed. "You displayed it, of course," Serena said. "Threats hate light." Giuliana's smile faded slightly. "You understand that marrying him puts a permanent mark on you. I had marks before. These I choose. Choice is fragile. Then I will keep making it." Giuliana studied her. Lucas' information was not the only breach. Serena's stomach tightened, but she did not let it show. "What does that mean?" "It means someone requested the penthouse floor plan 3 months before you ever called Massimo." "Who?" Giuliana's eyes moved. Not to Massimo, but toward Elena across the room. Serena felt cold. "No," Giuliana tilted her head. "I did not say her." Serena understood. Not Elena. Someone near Elena. Someone invisible, because service people were often made invisible by men with money. Dante heard it too. "The flower service," he said quietly. Massimo stepped forward. "You knew, I suspected," Giuliana said. Serena looked at her. "You wanted to see if I would flinch." "Yes, did I?" Giuliana's smile was small. "No," Serena turned to Massimo. "Do not shut the gallery down. If someone used the flower service, they may still be watching. Let them watch us not panic." Massimo's hands flexed, then relaxed. Dante was already moving. Quietly, no scene. Within an hour, delivery records exposed a temporary driver paid through 3 intermediaries to photograph service schedules in the penthouse elevator panel. He had delivered flowers twice while Serena stayed there. The first bouquet had been from Massimo. The second had been from no one. White lilies in the hallway. Elena had thought Massimo sent them. Massimo had thought Elena bought them. Serena had been too exhausted then to ask. Another lesson. Danger often hides inside assumptions. No one checks because everyone thinks someone else knows the answer. The driver was arrested the next morning. Giuliana denied ordering it. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was not. But the bigger truth was clear. The Carlotti game had more than one hand moving pieces, and Serena, for the first time, did not feel like a piece. She felt like a player. After the show, she stood before Room to Breathe. Massimo came beside her. "You should be tired." "I am. You should be afraid." "I am. You do not look it." "That is not the goal anymore." "What is the goal?" "To be honest, fear can come. It just cannot decide." Massimo took her hand. "I used to think power meant no one could touch you. And now," he looked across the gallery, at Dante speaking into his phone, at Elena comforting Serena's sister, at the black rose sketch sealed behind glass, at the people he had once called collateral without using the word. "Now I think power means knowing what not to destroy." Serena leaned into him. "That is a good start." Outside, the city kept its secrets. The Bianchi name still carried shadows. The Carlottas had not vanished. Juliana Rossi had not become safe. But Serena Costa had learned the difference between being protected and being powerful. She did not need to become cruel to be strong. She did not need to become fearless to move forward. She only needed to remember what healing had taught her. Take one breath. Tell the truth. Keep the evidence. Choose yourself. And never, ever let anyone call a cage love again.